The bar at the edge of the station smelled of burnt oil, recycled air, and the sharp tang of alien liquors. It was one of those places where no one belonged, and everyone knew it. Dim lights flickered above steel tables worn down by the weight of too many fists and too many secrets. Species from half the map's spiral arm gathered here to drink, to gamble, to sneer at one another across languages, and sometimes to fight. For humans, it was dangerous ground, but that was the point. Dangerous places offered freedom. Dangerous places offered anonymity. Dangerous places made you invisible until they didn't. She moved between tables with steady steps. The human waitress, her tray balanced with precision, her expression unreadable. To most eyes, she looked ordinary. Average height, dark hair tied back, a uniform just a shade too faded to suggest anyone care about appearances here. She was a server, nothing more. That's what the aliens believed. To them, humans were soft-bodied, weak, still newcomers to galactic society, tolerated for curiosity's sake. The waitress didn't contradict their assumptions. She offered drinks, took credits, vanished into the background. But eyes watched her. Alien eyes, too many, too sharp. At one table near the center, for members of the Chlorvis species sprawled like predators at rest. Each of them was built like a siege engine. Thick armored hides, tusked jaws, long arms ending in claws like a sheer metal. Their leader leaned back, tusks gleaming in the bar's dim light, voice carrying over the hum of conversations. He was amused. His gaze tracked the human woman with a mixture of disdain and something darker. "She walks like prey," he said in his own guttural tongue, though his companions understood the translation broadcast through their implants. "See how careful? Like she fears the air will cut her. Such a fragile thing." His companions chuckled. One of them thumped his claw on the table, making nearby patrons flinch. Across the bar, some of the smaller species turned away, pretending not to hear. They knew better than to interfere when the Chlorvith grew restless. Humans, though, were different. They had a habit of showing up where they weren't wanted. The waitress approached their table without hesitation. She set down 4 glasses filled with a glowing amber liquid, each one trembling faintly as if it didn't want to remain in place. "Your order," she said simply, voice steady. No tremor, no fear. She didn't look them in the eye, didn't challenge, didn't defer. She just delivered and turned to move on. The Chlorvith leader extended one massive arm and stopped her by placing a clawed finger against her shoulder. The contact was deliberate, dismissive, like a predator toying with something that couldn't fight back. "You serve quietly," he said, loud enough for the bar to hear. "You keep your head low. That is wise. But you are human." His tusk grin widened. "And humans pretend too well." The bar's murmur shifted. Conversations faltered. Some of the patrons leaned closer, sensing the spark of trouble. Humanity's reputation, half myth, half rumor, was always bait for alien arrogance. The waitress stood still, tray tucked against her hip, face unreadable. "Do you know what they say about your kind?" the Chlorvith leader asked. He tilted his head, mock thoughtful, "That you are stubborn vermin, hard to kill. But I do not believe this. I see only softness. I see only skin." His companions laughed, tusks flashing. The bar tightened around them, a circle of attention closing in. The waitress finally spoke, her tone calm, almost casual. "Enjoy your drinks." She turned to go. He caught the edge of her uniform between 2 claws and yanked. The fabric tore with a sharp rip, loud enough to slice through the silence. Gasps rippled across the room. Conversations died. Every alien head turned. The waitress didn't flinch. The ripped cloth dangled from his claw, like a trophy, but the smirk froze on his face. His eyes, black and pitiless, fixed on what had been revealed beneath the torn fabric. His companions stopped laughing. The noise of the bar collapsed into silence, so complete it was almost physical. What he saw was not fragility. It was not softness. Beneath the shirt, against her pale skin, was something etched deep, scars symmetrical, deliberate. They weren't random wounds. They were patterns, almost glowing under the harsh lights, like circuitry carved into flesh. Old burns that hadn't healed cleanly, arranged in sigils no alien recognized, but many instinctively feared. Around them, faint lines pulsed with a rhythm too steady to be natural. The leader's hand twitched. For the first time, his grip faltered. He released the torn fabric, letting it drift to the floor. He didn't speak. None of them did. The waitress adjusted a tray under her arm and looked at him for the first time. Directly, eyes dark and steady. The silence thickened. It wasn't just that she bore scars. It was what they meant. They weren't decorative. They weren't random. They were marks of survival. Marks of something endured that no Clorvith could name, let alone boast of facing. Around the bar, whispers began. Words in different languages. Overlapping, urgent. Some patrons leaned back, away from the table, as if distance would protect them. Others stared, wide-eyed, with the look of beings realizing they had underestimated something dangerous. The Clorvith leader's mouth opened, but no words came. He had intended humiliation, but what he had exposed humiliated him instead. He had expected weakness. He had found a story written into human skin that he couldn't understand, and that was worse than any blade. The waitress's voice cut through the silence, low and clear. You shouldn't touch what you don't understand. She didn't raise her tone. She didn't threaten. But the words sank like a blade into the silence, and the bar seemed to recoil. She moved on, stepping away from their table as if nothing had happened, as if she hadn't just frozen one of the deadliest species in the room with nothing but a glimpse of flesh. No one laughed now. No one breathed too loudly. The Clorvith leader sat frozen, claws flexing against the table, tusks grinding in uncertainty. His companions glanced at him, unsure whether to press the matter or abandon it entirely. And across the bar, the humans who had been sitting quietly, unnoticed until now, exchanged the smallest of smiles. They didn't cheer. They didn't intervene. They simply knew. They had seen this before, in one form or another. The galaxy never learned. Not until moments like this. Humans were never what they seemed. The silence that followed stretched too long, heavy enough to press against every chest in the room. It was not the silence of peace, but of realization, of unease that couldn't be laughed away. The waitress had returned to her rounds, pouring drinks into glasses with calm precision, her shirt torn but her posture unchanged. The glow of those scars burned in memory even when her back was turned. Aliens who had not dared to look closely before now struggled to look away. The Clorvith leader sat stiff, his claws still trembling where it rested on the table. His companions shifted uneasily. One muttered something low in their guttural tongue, but the words were swallowed by the oppressive quiet. No one wanted to speak too loudly. No one wanted to draw attention to themselves. The bar was filled with predators, but in that moment, every single one had felt like prey. Near the far wall, a pair of Makhtari traders whispered furiously, their heads bent close. Did you see? Did you see what was carved into her? Those were not natural scars. Ancient ritual? Perhaps they burned themselves, test themselves. Not ritual, the other hissed. I've heard of this. My grandfather told me stories. They say humans carry reminders of their battles on their very skin. They endure pain without flinching. It is their way. Another voice joined in, a reptilian patron with scales dark as coal. Endure? Those were not reminders. Those were warnings. That one has survived something I would not wish on my enemies. He drew back his tongue nervously, and she carried it like it was nothing. The whisper spread. Different tongues, different species, the same conclusion forming in the dark corners of the bar. Humans were strange. Humans were wrong. The waitress returned to the counter, set her tray down, and began wiping glasses as though nothing had changed. But her silence wasn't emptiness. It was weight. It pressed on the others more than shouting ever could. She didn't need to explain herself. The scar spoke louder than words. The Clorvith leader finally found his voice, but cracked around the edges. Tricks, he snarled, more to himself in the crowd. Paint. Nothing more. Cheap markings to frighten fools. No one believed him. Even his companions didn't echo the claim. They had seen the way the marks pulsed, the way they seemed alive under her skin, carrying heat like veins of fire. Paint did not move. Ritual carvings did not burn with their own rhythm. He slammed a claw on the table, desperate to shatter the fear creeping into his own chest. "She is prey," he growled. Nothing more. Yet when his eyes flicked toward her again, he did not hold her gaze. Across the bar, an old Voran merchant leaned closer to his drinking partner, a wiry insectoid from the outer colonies. "Do you remember the siege of Zeretha's moon?" he asked, his voice a rasp. The insectoid twitched its antennae. "Too costly. Too bloody. But yes. Why?" The Voran tapped his claw against the rim of his cup. It was humans. A colony, barely defended. The attackers thought it would be quick. Weeks later, the attackers were gone, burned from their ships, and the colony still stood. Those scars on her? They remind me of that. They remind me of people who fight until nothing is left to fight with and still win. The insectoid shifted uncomfortably. "Rumors. Are they?" The Voran's eyes narrowed. "Look around you. Does this room look convinced they are rumors?" The insectoid did not reply. The whispers became murmurs. The murmurs became theories. Tales spread of humans enduring radiation storms without shelters, surviving poisons fatal to other species, clawing victory out of battles no sane commander would attempt. Most of the stories were half-truths or exaggerations, but the common thread remained. Humans endured. An endurance unsettled species that relied on overwhelming power. The waitress returned to the Chlorvith table with a small, casual gesture. She set down a replacement drink. The leader tensed as though she dropped a weapon in front of him. She spoke only one word, but it landed with the weight of a sentence. "Spill." It was not an offer. It was a reminder. He had knocked his previous drink to the floor when his claws had torn at her shirt. She had replaced it without fuss, as though nothing unusual had occurred. But in that one word was a suggestion of balance. What is taken is restored. What is broken is remembered. He grunted, his tusks grinding, but he did not answer. He could not. At the far side of the bar, a young alien too drunk to know better laughed nervously. "It is nothing. Humans scar because they break so easily. They fall, they cut, they burn. That is all this is. Proof of fragility." His words rang false, hollow even to himself. He caught the stares of others and wilted, shrinking into his seat. The silence returned, heavier than before. The waitress leaned on the counter now, arms folded, watching the bar through half-lidded eyes. It wasn't arrogance. It wasn't defiance. It was simply the calm of someone who had been through worse and found nothing here worth fearing. She didn't need to prove anything. She had already proven enough. For the first time since entering the bar, the humans seated at scattered tables made their presence known. Not with words, not with movement, but with stillness. Their faces betrayed no surprise, no discomfort. They had expected this. They had been waiting. That realization unsettled the aliens more than anything else. The Chlorvith leader shifted, trying to reassert dominance. He slammed back his drink, the liquid hissing as it touched the edges of his tusks. Then he rose to his full height, towering over the table. "You will not frighten me with scratches," he growled toward the waitress. "You are soft. You are weak. Always." His words carried weight, but his tone did not. It cracked again, betraying doubt. The bar felt it. The predators smelled fear in her own kind. The waitress lifted one eyebrow, almost imperceptibly. She did not speak. She let the silence eat at him. It was another patron who broke it, a thin, pale being with skin like parchment and eyes sunken from too many years. It spoke slowly, deliberately, and its words carried far. Weakness does not carve itself into the skin of survivors. Weakness does not leave marks that make stronger species fall silent. All eyes turned toward it, then back to the human woman. The Chlorvith leader's jaw clenched. His companions whispered urgently at his side, urging him to sit, to stop before the humiliation grew worse. But his pride warred with his fear. The bar was holding its breath. The Chlorvith leader could not sit any longer. Pride clawed at him, burning hotter than fear, demanding release. His claws scraped the metal surface of the table as he rose again, towering above the others. The silence of the bar seemed to mock him, every gaze upon his back reminding him that it faltered before prey. He would not allow it. He would restore what had been stolen from him, even if it meant violence. "You," he snarled, his tusks flashing as he pointed a claw at the waitress. Enough of silence. Enough of tricks. If you are not weak, prove it. Stand before me. The words thundered across the room, but they rang hollow. They carried the weight of desperation, not certainty. Still, no one moved. No one interrupted. They wanted to see. They needed to see. The waitress did not rush, did not even sigh. She placed her tray carefully on the counter and stepped away from it, walking toward him with steady, unhurried steps. Every movement was deliberate, controlled, like a blade unsheathed but not yet swung. Her torn shirt shifted as she walked, revealing glimpses of scars beneath, each step reminding the room of what had already been shown. She stopped a few paces from him, tilting her head slightly upward to meet his glare. He loomed over her like a mountain, his armored bulk shadowing her slender frame. But when her eyes locked on his, the difference in size vanished. He shifted his stance without meaning to, unsettled by the weight in her gaze. "Prove," she repeated softly. Her voice carried further than it should have, each syllable cutting through the quiet. "I don't need to prove anything. You've already done it for me." The words sank into him like poison. Murmurs spread among the patrons. Alien voices low and urgent. The Clorvith leader's muscles tightened. He could not back down. He would not. His kind thrived on dominance. And here, dominance was slipping through his claws like sand. "Fight me," he demanded. "Show this room what you are." The waitress tilted her head, studying him. Then, almost lazily, she extended her arm and gestured to the nearest human seated at a corner table. The man rose without hesitation, tall, broad-shouldered, with a scarred face that bore the same quiet certainty as the woman's. He stepped forward, his chair scraping against the floor, and joined her at her side. Then another human stood, and another, until half a dozen had gathered. None of them postured. None of them snarled. They simply stood, silent, united, waiting. The leader's tusks ground together. What had been a challenge to one had become a challenge to all. The realization struck him harder than any blow. Humans did not stand alone. They never did. The first man spoke, his voice calm, level. "You asked for a fight, but you don't understand. With us, there is no one against one. There is all of us, always." The truth of it rattled through the bar. Species that thrived on hierarchy, on singular dominance, stared in disbelief at the quiet solidarity. It was not bluster. It was not threat. It was fact. The Clorvith leader snarled, but it wavered at the edges. He swung his claw down in a violent arc, aiming not the woman but at the man who had spoken. The strike was fast, brutal, enough to tear through bone. The man didn't dodge. He caught the claw in both hands. The sound of impact rang sharp. The man's arms trembled under the strain, blood seeping from cuts where the armored claw dug into flesh. But he did not break. He held it, muscles corded, jaw clenched. The leader growled, pressing harder, but the human held firm, eyes steady. Pain didn't stop him. Fear didn't enter him. He endured. Gasps filled the bar. Even the Clorvith companions leaned forward in disbelief. The waitress stepped closer, placing her hand lightly on the man's shoulder. Her calm presence steadied him. He met her eyes, nodded once, and with a roar born not of rage but of defiance, he shoved the claw aside. The leader stumbled a step back, his balance, his certainty, his dominance shaken. The humans did not press the advantage. They did not strike back. They stood together, silent, their stillness more terrifying than violence. The waitress finally spoke again, her words low, but carrying the weight of history. "You think strength is in the strike. You think power is in the armor on your skin. But real strength is standing when you should have fallen. Real strength is bleeding and refusing to die. That is what it means to be human." Every alien in the room felt it. The truth of it pressed down on them harder than gravity. Strength was not size. Strength was not claws, tusks, or armor. Strength was endurance. Strength was unity. And that strength was something their kind could not match. The Clorvith leader's growl faltered. His claws flexed, his eyes darted. But for the first time, he looked trapped. The bar saw it. They smelled it. The predator was afraid. The humans did not laugh. They did not celebrate. They did not need to. Their calm was victory enough. The waitress took one step closer, her torn shirt falling open further to reveal more of the scars. Each marked a story of pain survived. She spoke so quietly that the silence had to lean in to hear. You wanted to see what lies beneath. Now you know. We carry survival, where others carry pride. You tried to humiliate me, but all you revealed was truth. Humans don't bow. We break and we keep walking. The words froze him in place. His tusks clicked together in frustration, but his body betrayed him. He took a step back. Just one, but enough. The room erupted in whispers, disbelief turning to awe. The bar would never forget that step. The step backward was a crack that split more than the Cloverth's pride. The bar itself seemed to exhale at once, voices rising not in laughter but in awe. What had begun as a moment of humiliation grew into something far larger. In that one retreating step, the galaxy had been reminded of a truth it had tried too long to forget. The Cloverth leader lowered his gaze, unable to meet the human's eyes. The predators of the spiral arm had seen their kind falter before, but never like this. Never before a prey that refused to play the part assigned to it. He turned without a word and pushed through the crowd, his companions following with faces drawn tight, their tusks clacking in shame. Not once did they look back. The bar watched them leave, and no one jeered. No one dared. Silence lingered even after the door sealed shut. The humans resumed their seats as though nothing had happened. The waitress returned to her counter, lifting her tray once more. She adjusted her torn shirt without hurry, poured another drink for a waiting customer, and carried on with her work as though she had not just altered the balance of perception across half the known races. But the silence outside the bar did not last. News moved faster than ships. By the next cycle, whispers had become reports, and reports became stories carried to every corner of the station. Patrons who had witnessed the moment repeated it to anyone who would listen, embellishing details but never changing the core. A Cloverth had been stopped, not by strength, not by weapons, but by humans. The story grew with every retelling. Some claimed the scars on the woman's chest burned like fire. Others swore they had seen her eyes glow with something beyond natural. A few whispered that the humans had been waiting all along, silent predators disguised as prey, and that the Cloverth had been lucky to walk away alive. The truth was simpler, but the truth was more dangerous than the myth. In the council chambers of other species, the event became a matter of debate. Were humans truly so resilient? Were the old war stories true? Some dismissed it as exaggeration, but those who had fought beside humans in forgotten battles shook their heads. They knew better. The scars were no myth. The endurance was no lie. On the station itself, the change was immediate. Where aliens had once mocked human fragility, now they stepped aside in corridors, eyes averted. Traitors offered better terms, not out of kindness but calculation. Guards hesitated before issuing commands. The shift was subtle but unmistakable. Respect had never been given freely to humanity. Fear, however, spread like wildfire, and respect often followed in its shadow. The waitress continued her work without remark, but those who watched her closely noticed the difference. Where before she had been invisible, now she was untouchable. Aliens who would have jeered or pawed or demanded service with threats now waited in silence, their hands tucked carefully away. When she passed, they lowered their voices. She had not asked for it, had not sought it, but power had found her all the same. The humans who had stood with her remained as quiet as ever, but their silence now spoke of authority rather than obscurity. They gathered at their tables, drank their drinks, and let the galaxy write its own stories about them. They did not need to boast. Others would do it for them. Far beyond the station, the ripples spread. Cloverth Command heard of their leaders' humiliation. They raged, demanding explanations, demanding vengeance. But beneath the rage was unease. To strike back meant to test the truth of the whispers. And whispers could not be undone once tested. Across trade routes and military channels, tales of human resilience resurfaced. Forgotten reports were dredged up, battle logs reread. Small colonies that had held out against impossible odds were re-examined. Incidents once dismissed as coincidence or luck were viewed in new light. Piece by piece, a pattern emerged. Humans were not weak. Humans were not prey. They were something else entirely, something that could not be measured by size or muscle or armor. And in the bar where it had all begun, the waitress polished another glass, her expression unchanged. She did not look up when a pair of Vorin warriors entered and sat cautiously near the back. She did not look up when a Maktari trader approached her counter and placed credits without a word. She did not look up when the whispers grew into murmurs again, now not of disbelief but of reluctant respect. Only once did she pause. A small alien child, too young to know fear, tugged at her sleeve and asked in a high-pitched voice, "Is it true? Are you dangerous?" The bar held its breath, waiting for her answer. She knelt, meeting the child's wide eyes. "No," she said softly, the faintest smile tugging at her lips. "We're just human." The child blinked, not understanding, but the bar did, and the bar carried that answer into the galaxy.